Thank you. Good afternoon. I hope you had a great day. We have been looking at a lot of AI issues, and actually one of my targets this afternoon is to go further than AI, so it's very ambitious actually. Because sure, AI will be the base of a number of stuff, but which stuff are we talking about? Are we also talking about other things which are going to change our world in the future? They will use AI, it's obvious, as they're using digital technologies, that's obvious, but what else will happen in the future? So before we enter completely, this is the points I would like to address with you. First, I would like to discuss with you what is intelligence. Tough task, because we really have to work. Second, why AI has obvious and less obvious limits. We are going to talk about these limits quickly. I would like to talk to you more about neurosciences, biology, and sociology. And at the end, some non-obvious implications we may have out of all this discussion. Let's start with what is intelligence? And I ask you, each of you, with 2-3 people around your table, to take 3 minutes and to define what is intelligence. Not AI, intelligence. Okay? Take 3 minutes, all on your table, and define intelligence. As you have noticed, in most of your discussion, most of what you discussed has nothing to do with artificial intelligence. Nothing. Understanding the other, empathy, being able to really create things out of nothing, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to enter into your discussions. But it's good from time to take some distance with a concept, artificial intelligence, which has nothing to do with intelligence and nothing to do with artificial. Because it's not artificial, it's a real series of code lines and mathematics. So let's, I'm glad you did this exercise, because now you start to understand where I'm going to bring you next. Next is why AI has a certain number of obvious and non-obvious limits. I let you read this in case you have never seen this cartoon. It's a very good one. In short, a boss is talking with his programmer, and on the first question, the programmer answers, no problem. On the second question, he answers, I need a research team in 5 years and a few $1 million, by the way. Okay. This is the old definition of digital. Exact, with API, with clean data. Sure, it's very easy to answer the first question. The second is approximative, learning, and often messy data. Artificial intelligence is on the second dimension, not on the first one. And this is very important to have in mind. We are not anymore in the digital world. The digital world was an exact world, except the input was messy, in case you remember the story, garbage in, garbage out. Okay, this is not new. But we had normally exact results out of exact inputs, like an Excel sheet. With artificial intelligence, it's never exact. It's always an approximation. You may learn, you may improve the approximation by showing millions of cat pictures instead of hundreds of cat pictures. Sure, the cat recognition system will be better if you show millions of cat pictures, but it will still be approximate. Artificial intelligence is always approximate. What does it do, actually? Not many things. It recognizes pictures, it recognizes text, it recognizes audio stuff. It combines this stuff in order with data to find good translation or good interpretation, but more or less that's it. Okay, so you see all the applications to the right, which has again nothing to do with the intelligence you were debating a few minutes ago. And it's not that much the new El Dorado. As you understand, I'm a little bit taking a counterpoint with what you have been doing the whole day, but that's okay. For 3 reasons. First reason, this 96% is just 1%, but the best AI today are close to 96% good approximation. Example, if you look at the radiography of lungs, at 96% it tells you the truth if it's a cancer or not the patient has. But it's not 100%. So this is this whole notion of approximation. The second is the elevator you see here. Artificial intelligence is fabulous because it changes our world. It helps each of us to go one step higher on a sort of skills elevator. The easiest one because everybody has known this one, is the guy having a driving license, which suddenly, thanks to a GPS, can become a taxi, because he doesn't have to know the streets. The GPS knows it for him. Okay? And in a lot of professions, in most professions, we are largely helped by artificial intelligence. And it is fabulous. I'm not saying anything negative about artificial intelligence here. I'm very, very a fan of it. I'm just saying it creates electrical staircase which has some problems, because I'm glad to be on my step. I'm glad to get a bit on the next step on the elevator, but I don't like at all a guy coming on my step. This is the taxis versus the VTCs. And we all will have these reactions in the next future, where is actually AI disturbing my skills hierarchy. And it will disturb a lot the skills hierarchy. And the third thing you see here is a database. And the problem, one of the biggest problems with AI, and we have to be extremely careful about it, and a lot of scientists are working on it, the databases are biased. The software might be biased, the algorithm might be biased, it's okay, but the most interesting bias is the database. I give you an example which frightens me today. A lot of companies are taking recruitment AI system. And they ask the recruitment system, the model is, well, let's have people who correspond to the best people we have in the company, because they will be successful. First issue with this, you are looking for clones. Is really recruiting clones the best way to develop a company? I wonder if this model is good. But second, if you look at the best people in your company who have succeeded in the last 20 years, you will find mostly men. In other words, your AI will say, I don't want any women, because women did not succeed. Okay? This is a bias. It's an easy one, but I can give you 100 of examples of biases. Some are extremely complex to understand, especially technically, obviously. One other which you may have heard of is the facial recognition system used by autonomous vehicles. These systems have been trained on white people from California. Therefore, autonomous vehicles have a lot of difficulties to recognize black women. It's not that they're racist. It's because their training on the database has not been the right one. So let's be extremely careful, and we will have in the future to really think twice before we take the conclusion of an AI. Therefore, actually one of the biggest things it brings is a huge intellectual ethical challenge. Are we going to respect ethics as we would like it to be? Is this guy here to the right really an expert? And if he is an expert, what kind of expert is it? Because it's an expert which has no emotional intelligence, no critical mind. He just applies algorithms. It's great, he does great things, but how far do I want this guy here to be really an expert? And how do I define an expert? Is this guy helping me to make decisions? Is this guy making decisions for me? Wow, in this last sentence is very dangerous. If I let him make a decision for me, who am I? What kind of ethics do I have? What kind of responsibility do I have? What kind of accountability? This guy is not accountable, it's a machine. We have to be accountable. So at the end, we have to make the decision. Easy to say, yes, easy to say. Problem? Let's assume you are a financial advisor in a bank. And somebody comes to you and says, I would like to have a loan. You put all his data, and your AI works on the data of this guy, and the AI says, I'm not sure I would lend to this guy the amount he is asking for. This is the AI, the expert. What do? You know this guy for 20 years. You know him well. You have a lot of emotional intelligence with him. You really believe he will pay back this loan. And you give it to him. Because you have kept your accountability, your responsibility, and you have just used this AI as an expert to help you, but not as a decision maker. Fine. Okay. 6 months later, the guy doesn't repay. What happens? What is your boss telling you? Your boss will tell you, hey, the AI machine told you not to make a loan to this guy and you did it, how courageous are we to say, yes, I did it, wrong, okay, I will do other mistakes, I did it. And how many of you will say, well, okay, next time I will respect what the machine is saying. This is for a banking guy, it can be the same for a judge, it can be the same for a doctor, who will sue the one who is taking a decision against the pseudo-expert, which is the AI. It's a huge ethical problem, and we all have to answer it. Now, stop with AI, because you have been discussing AI since this morning. So let's go into another field, neurosciences. Neurosciences starts with simple things. Everybody has heard about the nudge. Okay? If you haven't, please buy the book from Mr. Thaler, who is the Nobel Prize 2 years ago on this topic of nudge. Nudge is a way to gently manipulate our brain, simply, to help you or to force you to do things we would not have otherwise done. It's very simple. It's a nudge. It's pushing people to do things. Here you have 3 examples, which I like very much. The first one is completely unknown to women, but men know exactly what I'm talking about. If you have a urinal with an insect, it can be a bee, it can be anything else, you reduce the maintenance cost by 50%. Because our brain, like to shoot. That's it. Good. And it works. It's a nudge. It works all the time. You can either use the elevator, which is to the left, or the staircase, which is bottom right. You don't do anything, and you measure the number of people taking the elevator. It's a one level. So it's not 10 levels, it's 1 level. So you can really walk about it. Most of the people use the elevator. You draw a red line on the floor going to the staircase, and people do follow the red line. Most of them. Fabulous, isn't it? It's a very interesting nudge, a very easy one. It works all the time again. The third one here is one of my favorites. This is in a small city in the UK. They have painted the zebra line to give the feeling it is actually a solid stuff. And obviously, drivers do calm down and come very slowly on this zebra line. The interesting thing is, even the inhabitants of this village, they know it by heart. They have seen this 100,000 times. They still slow down every time. So our brains are manipulating us. Obviously, it has good dimensions and less good dimensions, because sometimes you manipulate people to buy products they don't need. But this, we know how to use it for centuries with advertising. You may know about the survivor bias. For those who don't know, the survivor bias is another thing very interesting with neurosciences, is why our brain is biased when making decisions. This is one of the most interesting ones. It happens in the middle of Second World War. The planes which come back from a war mission have holes everywhere because they were at war, in combat. And then the chief engineers ask, okay, where should we put metallic plates to reinforce the body of the plane? Our natural response is to say, wherever we have holes. But the real response is, this plane came back. So these holes are not that dangerous. Where you have no holes, the plane didn't come back. So therefore, we have to actually put plates where we have no hole. Counterintuitive, isn't it? So our brains do think in a given manner because we are led to think in a certain way. And when you think twice, suddenly here you can yourself kill your own survivor bias whenever you see it. And I can tell you in management, the survivor bias is seen everywhere. This is a very interesting slide. You can read every line, I suppose. If not, you have to change your glasses. And if you really want to read it, you put bias neurosciences codex on your Google search engine, and you will find it. It's just a sort of analysis of all the biases we have in our brain, a lot. Okay. It's very interesting. And therefore, these biases, thanks to the neurosciences we start to know, it will change a lot of our decisions. It will change the way we make decisions together. It will change the way we make decisions alone. It will change the way we have others make decisions. So neurosciences will be an enormous management tool within the next few years. We really have to understand how it works. And the interesting thing here is the collective dimension of it. So if I am your boss and I start to explain something, somebody may tell me, hey, Dominique, aren't you here suffering the bias of too much self-confidence? This is a very known bias. And you will see that in the next few years, people will start to speak to you with, aren't you here having this or that bias? And if I ask a group to make a decision and he says, oh, I'm agreeing with you, boss, I'm agreeing with you, boss, the third will say, hey, aren't we have the bias of groupthink here? Just to agree because the boss said that and we start to agree? Can't we change a way to discuss this proposal? These are biases and they're going to enter into our daily life of management in the next few years. Just a few examples of how it will change the way you manage things. It will change training drastically, negotiation, obviously, leadership, communication, diversity management, empathy management, blah, blah, blah. Neurosciences, once we will have started to understand how it works in depth, will change an enormous number of things. The one I would really like for you to be careful of is training. Most of our training today, not here at CEDEP, obviously, but most of our trainings in companies is actually absurd from a neurosciences point of view. You put people in a room for a full day, okay? Often the room has even no window. Okay, that's absurd. We cannot concentrate for a whole day. And if we don't have a window with fractal shapes outside, we cannot think properly, we cannot be creative. So we have to rethink all our way of learning, including things like how can we use video games to change our skills. You have a lot of works working on this today. It's just fascinating how we are going to change training. Next, the next force I would like to discuss with you a little bit on is biology. And very often when I say biology will change management, people start to tell, hey, Dominique, are you serious? Biology and management? Hold on. Okay, give me a few minutes and you will agree with me. First of all, can I ask you what was the most important technological revolution of the 20th century? Automobile, nuclear power, telephone, internet, micro, whatever. Okay, forget it. The most important technological change in the 20th century was biology, antibiotics. Oops. Antibiotics, vaccines, and cancer treatment. Without these technologies, we would not be 8 billion. We are 8 billion, and 8 billion is the biggest challenge, ecological, demographic, economical challenge we have today. It's the biggest one. So this was, by definition, the biggest technological change in the 20th century. It's biology. All this is biology. Well, let's think about this, because this was 20th century, but 21st century will be exactly the same. Let me give you a few examples here. Genetics in particular and biology in general will completely change our 21st century for a few reasons which I'm starting to explain here. Genetic engineering, you may have heard of a technology called CRISPR-Cas9. If you haven't, you check on the internet. It's a technology which allows to take a gene out of your chromosome, to take it away, and because it carries an illness, and you put another gene which doesn't carry the illness instead. We know how to do that. It's a Lego game now with chromosomes. It's fascinating because we can see how to reduce illnesses, how to change maybe some characteristic of individuals for the future. You can see a lot of opportunities. Obviously, you are right also to think that some of these impacts will be negative. Okay, good. But most of it will be positive. We will be able to cure a large number of illness. Just to give you an example here of what this genetic engineering can do, you know that the Zika is a virus carried by a mosquito, a female mosquito. Actually, this female mosquito, the specific one, has a gene. This gene carries the Zika virus. Take the gene away, put a neutral gene instead, and and release this mosquito female in nature, all the babies she will have will not carry this gene anymore. And all the babies will also, within a few generations, you will have eradicated the Zika virus carried by a mosquito. Isn't it great? We don't do it today because we have some concern. If by changing this gene in the mosquito, don't we change anything else than just the Zika carriage? Or, second worry, what if this mosquito and this new gene goes to another species? And then what happens to this other species? And what if it kills the mosquitoes? And what if we have no mosquitoes tomorrow morning or in a few days? That will be a catastrophic stuff for humanity and for Earth. So today we don't do it, but we work on it, and intellectually it's very positive. It's less positive when you see this experience a few months ago where a Chinese doctor has been modifying 2 babies to make them immune to the AIDS virus. Okay, but this is normally not allowed today. We should not do that via international conventions. So this is genetic engineering, and we can do a lot of it. Predictive DNA analytics will play an enormous role. Most of you already have heard about all these companies where you can send a sample of something of you, and they will analyze your genome, and they will tell you, hey, you are at risk of this or this or that illness, but if you have this or that habit, it may be perfect for you, you may live longer. Fine. We are really today largely developing our understanding of how our illnesses are linked to some elements of our genome. We're still at the beginning, but it will be possible tomorrow to make very interesting DNA analysis. Frankly, it would be interesting if I have to recruit you to ask for a hair of you, and I will check. And then in the hair, I will say, oh, you're a great candidate, but you know, your illness potential is so high that you are going to be too expensive for our insurance company. Why not? So, as you can see, we have some negative dimensions here. But generally, it could be quite positive. Obviously, I just mentioned the designer babies. They have been done in China. A few American clinics are starting to provide selection in order to have kids with blue eyes or with higher IQ than the others. So we can do that today. I'm not sure it's very ethical, but the third one is epigenetics. Epigenetics is extremely interesting and extremely important for companies. What is it? Epigenetics is this science where we start to understand that something modifies some of our genes and create mutations, which generally means cancers. If we can identify this substance creating cancers, that's great, because we can just eliminate these substances. The problem is, we don't know today. We start to discover that. Now let's just think for 1 second an intellectual experience. Suppose tomorrow somebody discovers, a biologist discovers that some molecule, let's say from people like Monsanto, okay, creates a mutation in one of the genes, and they can prove it. Just think of the changes this means for the legal treatment of all these Monsanto cases. Today, we treat legal cases of cancers by statistics. For 100 people who have been exposed to glyphosate, to give the name, and 100 people who have not, we have more cancers here than here. So statistically, glyphosate causes cancer. Statistically. The answer of Monsanto is very clear. Hey, guy, yes, it's more, but many of them don't have any cancer. So it's not my product. It's your sample which is wrong. And they're right. It's a statistical way to approach the issue. If tomorrow a biologist proves that this molecule changes this gene and that this gene has a mutation and therefore you have a cancer, just think of the legal implications of it. It changes completely our way of thinking about epigenetics. This was for an obvious case like glyphosate, but think of all the products you put on your lips, on your skin, etc., which we are using every day. And we know they have some epigenetics effect. Which one we don't know yet, but we will know it within 10 years. So within 10 years, if you are a legal guy, be very careful what you plan for your company as exposure to risk. I can go a little bit further in here and show you a few examples of how we live together with genetic modification and so on. Just a few examples. To the top left, this is a worm, a sea worm, a small sea worm, it's big like this. You have seen thousands of them when you go on the beach. We just discovered a few months ago, a year ago maybe, that the hemoglobin of this worm is just fabulous. One, it's compatible with humans. Second, you don't need to store it in the cold. Third, it lasts for a long time because it captures a lot of oxygen and is able to keep this oxygen for a long time. We are working now on extracting this hemoglobin and giving it to humans. This has already started. Fabulous progress of biology. The second one, you can read it, modified chicken, so that we have some anti-cancer drugs in them. Then the second column, you know that we are working a lot on modifying the genes, mostly of pigs, so that their organs can be transplanted to humans, which is not bad. We may have tomorrow, except today we have to wait for somebody to die to get an organ. If we can grow them in animals, why not? You can see the ethical issue still, because what do we do to animals? Is it fair or not? I'm not going to enter into this discussion. I just want to plant a seed in your mind. To the right, you have two examples, species which have been or are modified for human feeding. Bottom right, you have huge pigs, and they're on sale already. They do exist, completely modified organisms. On the top, it's more subtle. Who knows about this cow? Nobody has seen this cow before. She's a famous cow. She produces women milk. Yes, I said women milk. Her genes have been modified in order to produce a milk which is extremely close to women milk. Think of the economic implications this can have all over the world. Now, it's not for sale. She's isolated. She doesn't even have the right to meet a bull. Could be too dangerous because we don't know if this gene modification is hereditary or not. So we keep her. But it will happen. We will have these sort of things. So the implication for the economy, for our companies, are just huge, much larger than the ones of artificial intelligence, as you can see. Last and not least on genetics, this is a scientific article, so you can take the title and you can go and read it on the internet. It's a very good article. These guys, and they're not the only ones, you have a whole movement here, trying to find a correlation between our genome structure and our political opinions. And frankly, wow, it's surprising. Now, today it's political opinions, but tomorrow it can be, do you have on time at work? Do you have creativity? Why not? We don't know where we go with this, okay? Now, you may, and again, I said if you recruit somebody, please ask an example of their genome, so you will have a lot of information. And you may think this is stupid. Now, for the oldest in this room, you may remember that 20 years ago, we were asking people to give a writing exemplary on a piece of paper, and we had people analyzing their writing, which was absolutely not scientific. Here, this is scientific, so it's much more serious. Well, let's be careful with this. But it will happen. You like it or not, it will happen. Next element in my analysis of the new forces, sociology. Our society is changing drastically, as you know, as everybody sees in our daily life. So let me give you a few examples here. First, collective and cooperative behaviors are becoming a social norm. You cannot say I'm not cooperating today. And every corporation asks you to cooperate. In some cases, too much. Because people from time to time need to be alone and to think alone before they cooperate with others. But it has become a social norm. It has also become a sort of economic norm. We have to collaborate on platforms. We have to, why should I keep my car for myself because somebody else can use it when I don't use it, blah, blah, blah. So it has changed enormously our society, thanks to digital, obviously, thanks to platform, in large, for the last 20 years, and it is going on. So this is becoming the social norm, and if you don't cooperate or if you are not collective-minded, you may be excluded. So it's very interesting from a sociology perspective. Second, in French it's RSE, in English it is CSR, so everybody knows what I'm talking about. In the past, let's say 1945, Harvard Business School developed a fabulous concept. It was called the TRS, Total Return to Shareholder. In other words, every measure of the performance of a company was with the TRS. Okay? And still today, a few consultants are using it, but thanks, not all, thanks God. In other words, it was telling to everybody the real performance of the company is a TRS, so everybody has to work to increase the total return to shareholder. I've never met anyone waking up in the morning and saying, today I'm going to enrich my shareholder. No, it's not a meaning. It's not real stuff. It is something great for an executive because they have a bonus, whatever, but not for everybody. So everybody wants something else. What is this something else today? This something else is corporate social responsibility. In the largest term of the word, it includes ecology, it includes your action on the local elements of your life, and it has to give you a meaning of work. It's not the same meaning for everybody in the company, but people do like a company which has a corporate social responsibility. And all our young people are expecting this more and more. Look at all this movement, the youth for climate, etc. They want more. They want our companies to give more. They don't say we don't have to give to shareholders. So it's not a revolution like the red guys in the 60s or 70s. No, not at all. It's okay. It's perfectly okay to pay for the shareholder. But it's not enough. We have to take care of the other stakeholders of the company. And so this is really the important point they are asking for. You want to recruit people today, especially young guys? Don't talk to them about TRS. Don't talk to them about the performances of the company via the shareholders. Talk to them about the things you do in society and how you do it. Obviously, our society, therefore, is looking for new values. I've been trying to give a list to go further on the CSR notion. What are these values people are looking for? And frankly, when you look at it, it's quite surprising. You have a lot of different views. All of them are toward improving the world, but all people do want one or the other of these values. And the biggest question for us, from a governance point of view, from a management point of view, is what do we give to these guys? How do we respond to these needs? As you can see, TRS is nowhere here. Okay, and it's obvious. So how do we behave? How do we transform our mind in order to give more to people? Social, these proximities, this notion to be close to each other, have a few collective mind, cooperative, have a few negative sides. Two of them are the bubbles and the fake news. We have more and more fake news, as you can see, and it's very easy for any one of us to launch a fake news somewhere. Very easy. Anybody can be the source of a fake news. The bubble is in echo chambers is slightly more complicated. It is this notion that because we are in collective, because we are in groups, we tend to trust our group, even if our group is only displaying bullshit. And that's very dangerous, because we need to look at other groups. We need to understand how other people are thinking. And we don't always know how to do it. We're not always immune to the fake news or the bullshit. I really advise you to read some books on bullshit, for instance, the one by Harry Frankfurt, published in '98, so it's quite old. Or for those who read French, you can read Total Bullshit, very good title, from a great French sociologist called Sébastien Diez. It's one of the best studies I've ever read on bullshit. And I've read a lot, including a lot of bullshit. Now, another thing with our living together and cooperating, etc., is what I call tripadvisorization. Everybody's okay? You can repeat tripadvisorization. Okay? Now, if you play theater, by the way, it's a very good exercise. Every night before you go to bed, you say tripadvisorization 10 times. I can tell you it's a good exercise. Tripadvisorization is this movement by which we evaluate each other all the time, and we evaluate everything all the time. In other words, we are evaluated all the time. Okay. What does it mean? It means that you end up with things like that, You know, everybody speaks about China and the social ranking, the social not. I don't want to talk to you about China. Everybody has heard about China. This is America. This is America. This is a website called My Life. Check your American friends. They have a note. And you can see what kind of note it is, what it is, do they have legal records and whatever. It's a very effective site. I've used it several times. I never knew you had so much information available in the US. We don't have it in France, and it will be forbidden probably, but in the US you can go there. Another example from the US, this is Newark. Newark decided about 2 years ago now, that in order to reduce criminality, there was one very simple way to have all the public cameras, the public surveillance cameras, available to everybody. So you go to the internet and you can see who is on the street. If you don't trust your wife or your husband, it's just great. You can follow him or her the whole time. So let's not laugh about the Chinese who do that. We are there. We are there. We are in a surveillance society, and we don't have one big brother. We have millions of little brothers looking at us if they want to. Out of all this, I would like to take a few non-obvious implications for management. And after that, we may have some discussions. I hope so. First one, because of this TripAdvisorization, because of the visibility, because of the transparency, we will have to be politically correct, ecologically correct, social networkingly correct, ethically correct. Wow, that's a big challenge. What happens when you have so many correctness challenges? You stop showing anything which might be different. We are averaging everybody, and we will become extremely average. One of the worst examples is for those who have seen last week in the New York Times. They decided to stop their cartoons, political cartoons, because they had too many people thinking that these cartoons were not correct from any angle. So they said, okay, we stop. What does that mean? If the New York Times doesn't have cartoons anymore, what does that mean for our freedom of communication, etc., etc.? If they themselves average, how are we going to average? And this is quite important because every one of us, as I said at the beginning, is evaluating the others. Who has a bad mark on Uber? As you know, Uber, you give a note to the drivers, and they give a note on you. Who has a bad mark on Uber? Nobody in this room. Well, you are happy. Because if you have a bad mark, you wait longer than the others. I discovered that recently with my son, who didn't know his mark, and he said, I don't use Uber anymore. The drivers never come. I said, did you check your mark? No. I checked 1.9. My son, I understand why they don't come. I have a 4.9. They come immediately. Do you see the impact this has on our society? By the way, on recruitment, have you your mark if you recruit somebody or if you want to be recruited? Wow, this will be an interesting change. It will average a lot of our communication, individually and collectively. The next point I would like to outline with you here is something which might sound counterintuitive and probably over-optimistic, but I'm an optimistic guy. The fake news, the bullshit will allow the return of a large, trustable organization and a serious media. This is actually a real good news. Why do I say that? Because newspapers like Le Monde, for instance, have never had as many subscribers as today. Why? Because people start to think that the stuff they think on the Facebook information flow or on any other social network is actually not that reliable. Maybe it's fake news. Well, if I go to Le Monde, I can trust Le Monde. And this is the same for most of the major media. In other words, we start to have developed an immune system. This immune system says, hey, is this a fake news? Let me check. We have data check, obviously. Most newspapers, most radio newscasts, most television newscasts have now a section where they say, oh, this is the fake news of the day. This creates an immune system because we start to react by asking ourselves, is this a fake news or not? I use the word immune system for a purpose. You know the word meme? A meme is an information circulating on the internet. Okay? This word was invented by Richard Dawkins in 1995 in a book called The Egoist Gene. And he said there is an incredible analogy between viruses, real one, and fake news. The analogy is that the virus goes around. If I have a virus and I go within this room, you will all have this virus in a few minutes. Memes is the same thing. If I see an information which I find interesting or emotionally strong, I Twitter it. I resend it. This is the same as a virus. And therefore, he says, for the virus, what we do is build our immune system. We have to do the same with fake news and bullshit. Let's build our immune system internally via training, as ourselves by just thinking a little bit more, but also with everybody in every circle. And let's stop retweeting something of which we are not sure. Many people do still that, but I'm optimistic. I think it will decrease and we will use more major media. It has another implication for you. This trust in serious media is also a trust which will come back to large organizations and maybe to your company, maybe to governments, maybe to large banks. If large organizations can show that they resist, like on this picture, and they don't let fake news come out of their communication or whatever, we may trust them. We may come back to large organizations. We may attract young people. Because today, as a young guy, I may have a proposal from a startup who proposes me to be free and to work actually as a freelance for the startup, and maybe a day I will be millionaire. Hold on. The large company may also tell me, no, I have means for you. I have understand what your requests for life are, what your values are. I'm ready to give that to you, to give you more freedom, to give you more means to develop your ideas. The large companies become attractive again. Nobody says that today, but it's clear. When people have started to understand that startup culture is bullshit, because it is bullshit, now we can come to larger companies. In startup, I say it's bullshit because it's 1 out of 1 million or 10 million who really succeeds, okay? You have one Mark Zuckerberg. For one Mark Zuckerberg, how many people do you have who failed? It's fine to fail. And a lot of gurus today tell you, well, you should fail, it's good, don't worry, be yourself, enjoy, be a self-starter. Come on. Not everybody is a self-starter. Not everybody wants to be in this role. We have a major role to play, especially in large organizations, to attract these people and their energy and their will to change the world. The world is not changed only into startups, even if every startup says, I'm here to change the world. Bullshit. The large companies also can change the world. So what can we do about them? So this was really a message I wanted to convey to you here. I said it will push toward conformism. Sorry, this one I said earlier. Also, we said today, because of these elements in society, we have to push people in the center. Oh, great. Now, it's not very new. For the last maybe 100 years, most CEOs have said at the beginning of their annual meeting, you know, the power of this company is people. It's only thanks to our people that we grow. You have heard that before? Okay. Now, what does it mean, really? Okay. I let you read, because this is a very important message. Everybody can read, even in the back? Sure, it seems harmless, but you hire one human and next thing you know, they're taking your job. I hope this will happen. I hope more humans will take the jobs of robots. I hope humans will really be put back in the center. By the way, this is a practical example because do some of you know the hotel Henna in Tokyo? Some of you have heard about it. It's a hotel where everything was done by robots. They have been firing most of their robots 2 months ago because the consumer just couldn't live anymore with robots. Okay. So we need to put people back, and we need, in some cases, to put robots out. Because human proximity will be our new luxury. If you look back at what has happened with the digital world in the last 20, 30 years, digital has replaced human contacts. We have no more human contacts. When we go to the airport, we don't see somebody. We see a machine taking our boarding card or just our smartphone. When we go to a supermarket, same thing. We have less and less human contact. With our colleagues, we don't see our colleagues. We have email with them. okay? And if by chance we have a meeting, everyone is in front of his computer and actually does his mail while the others are working. Oh, it's the same thing. Hold on. We have killed human contacts. And we need human contacts for a very simple reason, by the way. We are humans. So we need to be in interaction with our humans. Humans will be the new luxury. Just as a very simple example, when you give a call and you arrive on a call center where a robot answers to you, how many times did you get angry? Because the robot did not understand anything you wanted. Or was carrying you for one question to the other and then coming back to the first question because it's impossible. So human will be the new luxury. Proximity will be the new luxury. And the real big and interesting management question is, are we ready to pay, we as individuals? If you have a choice, you arrive on my call center and I tell you, okay, you can be handled with a robot or handled with a human person. Here it's 40 cents a minute, here it's $1 a minute. Hey, that's a real choice. We don't have this choice today. We will have it tomorrow. And I personally will choose the $1. But you can see the implication. I can afford the $1. For those who can, they will still have the bad system, which at the end, by the way, is more costly because 40 cents a minute for 20 minutes of bullshit, it's really expensive. But never mind. We will have to create this choice for consumers. We will have to reinvent proximity with human. How do we do it? Is a complex stuff because of this economic issue. How do we pay for the humans? And are we ready to pay? I'm not sure we are all in this room ready to pay because we have a tendency to want to pay less all the time. And most of advertising, by the way, told us to pay less. I give you an interesting example before the digital world. We had places to fill your car. It was called gas station. In France, it was called station service because you had a service. A guy was actually putting the gasoline into your car, was cleaning your windows. It was a human person. Today, you arrive and you fill yourself. You don't even clean your window. Did this happen because a robot took the job? No, there's no robot. You are the robot by putting things in your car. But it happened because we decided that 1 cent per liter less was worth doing it ourselves rather than relying on a human being. Think of this. We are not very sound in our way of thinking here. Good. Let's go further. How do we therefore change our organization for putting people in the middle? Because putting people in the middle means becoming really more flexible, more accurate with what people expect, including the customers. And it means what I say here, it means how to go from armies or armored knights to agile Jedis. A company and a good employee of a company today is in many cases a knight in armor, which means it's beautiful to look at, absolutely beautiful, okay? But it's not very agile, okay? And if in front of him you have a Jedi, no luck. A few people tell you, well, we have to liberate the organization. Okay, then I take all the armor away and my guy is nude. A nude knight in front of a Jedi, same result. In other words, it's much more complicated than that. We have to change elements of our organization in order to become more agile. What are these elements? Structures, systems, and culture. Example of structure. How tight are my silos? If the silos are quite tight, you are in the armor position. How can we make the silos more porous? This is a structure issue. Systems, how do I reward people, for instance, compensation systems? Does this system imply a behavior which is not the one I'm expecting? For instance, listening to the client or making money on the client. These are two different stuff. And obviously culture. Is my culture open to new things, including accepting AI within the organization? Okay, how can I do that? So you have a lot of work here to help your organization change. If you want, you can give more details in the Q&A session. But I would like to finish this presentation with a few elements on what I call the new inequalities and the new injustices, because all what we have been discussing here, including AI,
will create new inequalities and new injustices, and we need to know how to handle them. New inequalities, you know today that some skills are more in demand than others. This is a way of inequality. Soft human skills and other manual skills are not valued socially today. If you are really a good nurse, you are not valued versus a bad nurse, because you are just valued as a nurse. And nobody takes care of your real difference. And at the same time, some technical skills are largely overvalued. People are paid much too much today. So how do we do that? Third, in new inequalities, something which is rising fast is status at work. We love to have freelancers in our companies because we don't pay them that much. But at the end, we create a very serious inequality in a society. And new injustices, where will information asymmetry create injustice? I'm working with a large insurance company today. And you know, one of their key concerns is, namely with biology, is, well, will our insured people know more than what we do on their health? It will create an asymmetry in information favored to them. Oh, that's not good. Now, the patient or the insured guy thinks exactly the same. Do they know more on me than I do know about me? So this notion of information asymmetry is a very important one. It will play a huge role with artificial intelligence. The biases of AI, I mentioned them before. Neurosciences will bring something else. You all have heard about IQ. Okay? We measure the IQ of people. Just think if instead of one IQ, we can measure 100 dimensions of our brain. This will create a lot of inequalities and injustices in our sociology. And biology, I mentioned to you the example of is your genome telling me that you are going to have too many illnesses? I don't hire you. This will create inequalities. So we are in a very interesting world from an ethical perspective, not only thanks to AI, but thanks to all the others. And therefore, we need to renew our immune system, as I said, because we need to, for each of us, train ourselves on fake news, reputation, etc. We need for everybody to learn how to not fail into cyber security issues. It's really an individual stuff here. We need new training and new learning. We need to, including in corporate training, to have social sciences, sociology, philosophy, history. It's a must. It's not a nice to have, it's a must. Teach people philosophy. And we may need, in some cases, need for ethical committees. We need to reinvent the full notion of ethical committees. Now, the girl on the left, some of you have recognized, it's called Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt is probably the biggest, the best philosopher of the 20th century, which will be extremely relevant in the 21st century. Why do I say that? Hannah Arendt is mostly known for her work on totalitarianism. It's not the one which I'm interested in today. It's her work on what she called ordinary evil. Ordinary evil was a word she used after the process of Eichmann. And everybody said Eichmann is a monster. And she said, no, I've been at the process. Eichmann is not a monster. Eichmann is not a stupid guy who doesn't think, who has renounced to think. He has just obeyed orders. When we see the influence of artificial intelligence, of digital systems, of new forces I've just explained to you here, let's not forget to think. We have to think, each of us individually. No artificial intelligence will think for us. So I will close with this, just suggesting that if you are ready or not, and I will suggest, if you have a few questions, to challenge the elephant. And if you want really to know more, my book is on sale over there. This is my advertising page. I come back to my elephant. Why do I put an elephant here? Because, as you know, this American expression, there is an elephant in the room. Is there an elephant in the room? Is there something I should have spoken about, and frankly I did not, which you really believe is important? Thank you.
Shall we dance around the elephant, or do you touch it? Who's going to start?
I have a short question, and that is, do you think that more high tech will give us opportunity for more high touch?
I'm convinced of it. The more machines, the more technology we will have, the more humans we will need. And I'm convinced by what I said about humans is a new luxury. I'm convinced we have a lot of jobs to create in order to respond to all our needs. So I'm very optimistic on the role of humans. We just have to switch part of our mind, because until a few years ago, the target of the company was to increase TRS and therefore to reduce costs. Okay. Today, the target is how do we increase the value we bring to the world. The cost is important, but if we want to increase the value, we may have to increase a certain number of costs. So I think we have to change some mentality here.
Thank you. Who's next? Yay.
Whoa!
Okay. When you're having this speech with the people around you at home, with family and friends, how receptive are they to this concept? Or do they say, no, this is just intellectual thing, you don't understand the society? How ready are the people to understand or to have this open-mindedness that you just told about?
At home, I have a very good conversation, no problem. Now, I give you another case, which is quite interesting. I decided this year to teach again to young people. I've been teaching to executives for years, and I thought, well, I need to go to younger people. So I teach at Sciences Po, people who were between 23 and 27, 28. I had 40 students. I've done a full course on all what I just described here. And I've been asking them how they reacted. What do they think about this? And interestingly enough, most of them were at first scared. Not only by me, but what we had heard. And when they thought about it, they changed their mind and thought, well, that's interesting. We may have a role to do, we have a role to play for avoiding the bad force and having the good force. I end up with this course very optimistic to see these young people really wanting to change the world, really wanting to think seriously. One of the questions I asked them, it was the hardest one, is you are about 25 on average. You will have children in 10 to 15 years. Are you ready to pay for a genetic modification of your children? To have blue eyes, to be more intelligent than their neighbors? And they didn't know what to answer. Because on one hand, they said, oh no! And then they said, oh yes, but if all my neighbors do it, shouldn't I do it? And this social pressure, in my view, is really where we have to play a role here as adults with all this generation. It reminded me of something which happened in India between 95 and now, when you had easy availability to ecography. When a woman is pregnant, you can have an ecography, and if it's a girl, in some cases, you got rid of the girl. So today, if I tell you your embryos has Down syndrome, do you want to keep it? People say no. Tomorrow, if I say your embryo has a risk of having an IQ of maybe just 50, do you keep it? You see, the questions are extremely deep. They are really questions of life and death for us and for the next generations. But the interesting thing I had with these students is it's their generation. They are going to be able to decide. All what my generation could do is, okay, my daughter, you're not too bad. I can, if you succeed, I will pay you your studies at Harvard. It will cost $100,000 per year. Good. Now it's, okay, what if I pay $100,000 to get the gene of my next child modified? You see the issue? It's not simple. But I think we have to look at these issues in a positive way. If we can eradicate illnesses, it's great. If we can have people who work together in a better way, thanks to neurosciences, it's great. Let's take the optimistic part of it and not only the negative.
Thank you. Last chance. Delphine.
Thank you. It was really great, this presentation, and raises the issue about the importance of ethics in how we lead business. and I'll have a little provocative question is how we're going to evaluate the return on investment on ethics, because you didn't have talked about one key element, which is economics, how financial is our economy now, and what it drives it. So.
I have two answers here. One is the return of investment will be obvious, because if you don't have the right ethical and CSR behavior, you will not have candidates anymore. Without candidates, your company is dead. So it's an easy return on investment. The second is more delicate. And again, I had this exercise with my students at Sciences Po, and I loved it. I dispatched them in small groups like you are, and I said, well, build me the ethical committee for Monsanto, composition and way of working. Build me the ethical committee for Volkswagen, etc. And you know what? Most of them started with something stupid. Actually, all of them. They composed the ethical committee with people from inside. They didn't ask people from outside to come on the ethical committee. They were so blindfolded on their business and their values as they are today, they forgot to see that there are people outside. They did not invite young people. They did not invite philosophers. They did not invite sociologists. To me, that's a really interesting issue. If we have to compose an ethical committee, what is it? Who is there? Remember, you have seen the case of Google a month ago? 2 months ago. Google has put together an ethical committee. And interestingly enough, they took people from the outside. This ethical committee has been lasting 1 week. Because the social networks were extremely tough on the composition of this ethical committee. Namely because there was a woman from the American Heritage Foundation, which is an extreme right lobby, and she was on the ethical committee of Google, and people said, hey, that's not possible. So it's a very difficult stuff to create an ethical committee today. It's not just, okay, let's have an ethical committee. So thank you for the question, because it is the major question. We still need to have an economic living out, however, of an environment, a world where things are changing. But it's part of the elephant. I did not discuss enough on the economics. Thank you for that.
Thank you.